All right, we're live. We're live on YouTube. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Sam McIngvale. He is our CEO of Coinbase Custody, which is our product for institutional customers to store their crypto. And Sam has a pretty interesting background. He's been working in algorithmic trading and things like that before Coinbase. Let's see. Coinbase Custody, we wanted to let people know, is now the largest crypto custodian by AUM with over $7 billion that's flowed in the last 12 months or so since this product launched, which is super cool. And we've had a lot of good questions from the community. So we're going to answer those for about 20 minutes. And if you get a chance, subscribe to our YouTube page. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you can also ask them live on our Twitter feed or in this YouTube live channel, and we'll try to get to them. All right, let's get started. So, Sam, what's happening in custody these days? Kick it off for us.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Brian. Custody has been exciting. So in the last probably 6 months or so, we've grown to become the largest crypto custodian in the world. We think at this point, we're also the fastest growing. So we're seeing somewhere on the order of maybe 10 clients plus something around 100 million, 200 million in net inflows per week. So we're seeing lots and lots of crypto assets flowing into Coinbase Custody. And I think maybe what's been most exciting is it's just validating this thesis that Coinbase had a long time ago, which is there are a lot of institutional investors queued up, waiting to come into this asset class, excited about this asset class and all sort of the new things that it can offer it, but really waiting for that sort of that foundational element to exist, all the things they're used to seeing in other traditional asset classes. So a lot of that infrastructure to get out there. We think that we have helped a lot of those institutions cross the chasm. We're excited for many more to cross the chasm here in the next few months. So it's been an exciting ride.
Mm-hmm. How many institutional customers do we have now in custody?
So we have just over 200 institutional customers spread across about 20 different countries in the world right now.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when you and I first met, it was 2018. There was all this news that all these big institutional customers were going to start investing in crypto. And we went out and talked with a bunch of them, and they were all interested in it, but they weren't ready to pull the trigger because there wasn't a qualified custodian that had all the SOC controls and everything that they could kind of, attest to all their LPs and auditors and everything. Like, actually, this is a qualified custodian under the SEC. And so I remember you and I had this conversation. It's like, all right, let's go build this foundational piece of infrastructure for the industry. And we eventually got that started, and it seems like it's really now working. I think a lot of people don't know that yet.
I agree. I think one of the reasons Coinbase Custody has had a lot of success, particularly maybe the last 6 months, is we now are starting to have an operational track record of about 6 to maybe 12 months to look back on before that. So one, folks might hear Coinbase Custody, they might see an announcement. They don't necessarily put 2 and 2 together in their heads that, a qualified custodian, the infrastructure I need now exists. But then when they come back around a few months later and actually look us up, they see a number of different touch points that might have been there. They see news articles, they see the actual proof. And then when we actually start talking to them, we can show them an operational track record of 6, 12 months, whatever it might have been at the time, that sort of proves to them that we know what we're doing and we check all the boxes they need. So I think a lot of what custody is it's a track record and it's being out there. And while we know that we're not going to necessarily touch or hit or talk to all the different institutions that are thinking about coming into the space right away, the longer we're out there and the longer other institutional players as well are out there, the more opportunity those folks are going to have to just reinforce in their heads, hey, the infrastructure we need is here, and they'll begin to move into the space.
Cool. All right. Well, maybe if we have time, we can chat about how we keep all the coins secure, insurance and staking and all those features. But let's get into some of the customer questions or just people on Twitter and YouTube that wrote in. So let's see, from Kinetic Crypto on Twitter, with stablecoins emerging to dominate as the go-to forms of medium of exchange, what role do you see Bitcoin playing in traditional finance in 10 years? You want to start with that one? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
And let's bounce it back and forth because I'm sure you have some interesting views on this.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is unique in that it is definitely the most established use case in crypto today. Bitcoin is predominantly seen as this store of value where I think folks, institutional investors in the US that I'm familiar with, but also worldwide, see it as a really interesting alternative asset to invest in relative to their domestic fiat currencies or inflation, things like that. Obviously, it's a fantastic store of value for folks in emerging economies that might have higher rates of inflation. So it's this really interesting store of value. And I don't think that role for Bitcoin gets eroded or changes as stablecoins start to emerge as a medium exchange. Just like I mean, a really overused but obvious example would be gold versus the dollar. The amount of gold in the world or the amount of dollars in the world doesn't necessarily impact the other. Both have their use cases. And so I think given where Bitcoin is today, we can be assured or we can have confidence that it's going to be around probably in a decade and play a big role in financial investors' portfolios. Hopefully we see quite a bit more from stablecoins as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bitcoin's going to be around in a decade for sure. And I would quibble with the question, the premise of the question maybe a little bit, which is that stablecoins have now dominated as medium of exchange. I think that could happen, but I wouldn't say that that's an assured, I wouldn't say that that definitely happened yet. We're seeing stablecoins be used on DEXs as, sort of a fiat to crypto pair. We're seeing it be used a lot in DeFi, people borrowing and lending. And so, USD coin, for instance, is now the number 2 stablecoin by AUM and trading volume, and it's gaining on Tether about 1% share a month or so, which is still the largest, despite all the setbacks it's had. So we are seeing stablecoins grow, but people like to tease me on Twitter, like, Brian, why don't you say Bitcoin? Bitcoin, it's going to be here in 10 years, and it could actually be, Bitcoin could be the medium of exchange. I want to see these layer 2 solutions succeed, like Lightning, and we have some internal efforts where we're trying to look at those things too. So I think that's a great start.
Yep.
What's next? You want to read this one?
Yeah, absolutely. This is from Maxabillion. Brian, what are your thoughts on the pushback Libra's getting?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, this is kind of a hot topic. It's amazing how many people are out there asking about Libra all the time. So let's see. First of all, I just want to say that Coinbase is coin agnostic. So we are supportive of any team that is building cool new stuff in the cryptocurrency industry, whether that's on top of Bitcoin or totally new assets. And so Libra is one of about 6 or 7, I think, really high potential projects out there with good teams backing it. So that's the first step. Now, I was a little surprised and frankly disappointed about the pushback that Libra got. And I understand why, because the government is very unhappy with Facebook right now. But I think that's kind of clouding their judgment, because the US really needs to continue to innovate in this arena. And if you look at places like China, where they already have WeChat as a payment system that honestly is so far ahead of the US, and it's driving all kinds of innovation there. The financial service industry in the United States, it doesn't feel like it's really innovated as quickly as we would all like. ACH payments still take 3 business days. Why is that, right? And the credit card fees, and we can go on and on down the list. So I really think that the US should embrace anybody who's trying to innovate in this area. And even if they don't like the company that it comes from, in this case, Facebook, that's not really a good reason to stifle innovation. So those are my thoughts. Anything you want to add?
I'll just echo a couple of things you said. Innovation is predominantly led by private companies. So to stifle that in particular feels like, or to not embrace that from the US government is frustrating. And I think it was just this morning that the Chinese president Xi Jinping said blockchain should be a strategic investment for China, and is something that they should allow to sort of flourish as a means for them to move ahead in the world. And that sort of buy-in, I think, especially relative to what we're experiencing in the US, is one, I'm very happy to see them out front and leading that way, but also very frustrating for us. So hopefully as other governments around the world start to buy in, that will influence the US to get involved, or at least allow companies that are operating sort of in an above board way in the US to iterate a little faster and be a little more experimental.
Yeah. And one thing, I think that's totally right. And one other last interesting thing before we move on is that, so Libra has said they want to come out with their own stable coin. And Center, which we're a member of, already has a stable coin out there called USD coin, and it's backed 1-to-1 by $1 in a US bank account, which people seem to be more open to at this point. So we've actually had like the government of Bermuda, the premier of Bermuda recently announced that their country is going to start accepting tax payments in USD coin. And there's a whole bunch of countries around the world that they have their currency pegged to the US dollar. And so we've had a bunch of central banks and treasury folks from around the world actually reach out to us after that announcement. And so I think you might start to see more countries accepting tax payments in USDC, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, very exciting.
Okay, next question. So we got a live question from YouTube here for Sam. What is Coinbase Custody's plan for global expansion?
Great question. Coinbase Custody today, I mentioned earlier, we already service clients in about 20 different countries around the globe. We do that on a cross-border basis. So that means that is our US entity servicing those customers around the globe. What we're finding is that while that works really well for folks that just have sort of pure safe storage needs for their crypto assets, it doesn't meet any regulatory or sort of local jurisdictional needs that those folks might have. On the other hand, we're not able to just go and set up regulated entities sort of in every jurisdiction around the world. So we're picking and choosing where it's sort of we can get the most bang for our buck right now in terms of where we might go set up shop. We have a number of clients in Europe. We understand the regulatory environment there very well. And so we will be looking to make some specific pushes or plans into Europe, both with probably some new entities and maybe some regulatory license down the road. And we're also very excited about APAC. We have a number of clients over there spread across that whole region. And while it's a bit more fragmented than what you might see sort of in the Eurozone and from a regulatory perspective, I think what clients value is they just value trust. They value being able to use someone like Coinbase to store their assets securely. So we can find the right ways, we can put the right people on the ground over there to interface, understand those local needs, and be able to service those folks with or without having to spin up sort of really robust regulatory licenses, which we might have in play at some point down the road.
Yeah. I think trust has turned out to be really important in this industry, which is part of the reason I think why we saw so many assets flow into Coinbase Custody. And people, a lot of times in these client meetings that we go to a lot, they ask us, how are you keeping the coins secure? And there's a short answer and a long answer. I mean, the short answer is that we've developed some proprietary technology around that. We often split up the keys into, say, 10 pieces. We have various key holders distributed around the world. And say any 5 of those 10 pieces could be used to reassemble a key and have a signature happen. That's a high level explanation. There's various iterations on that we're developing and whatnot. But we go through a lot of really interesting procedures with that. Disaster recovery drills where we simulate, the east coast of the United States goes offline or is hit by a meteorite or something. And we do third-party pen tests where we have people who come do these red team drills, where they'll come pose as an employee who's interviewing at Coinbase. And, only myself and our head of security know that it's actually someone who we've hired to try to break into our systems. And as they're interviewing around the office, they try to put malware on someone's computer or do those kind of things. And usually at the end of the day, after the drill, we tell the security team and the incident response teams like, okay, it was a drill. Let's all celebrate, debrief, have some beers. So those are really good ways to keep learning. So
maybe one thing I'll add before we move on is there's a real common thread, I think, that is trust sort of globally, and that is Coinbase's brand recognition. If you're into crypto, you've probably downloaded the Coinbase app. You've probably used that as probably your first step into the crypto ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And so having that connection means we can go talk to clients in the Philippines or Singapore or in any country in Europe, and there's immediately a common ground upon which we can discuss the services that are Coinbase Custody. And I think there's a lot of trust that has to do with the track record Coinbase has built up of always investing in security, always investing in compliance, et cetera. So that's just a fantastic sort of conversation started for Coinbase Custody around the planet.
Yeah. Actually, I remember I had a funny conversation with Mark Andreessen, who's one of our major investors one time. And I was like, we're planning to launch like this institutional product. And should we create a new brand for it? And he was like, you would be absolutely crazy to do that. The Coinbase brand is worth, try to think of how much would another company have to do to create that level of brand awareness in crypto? They'd have to spend billions of dollars. And that retail brand actually ended up having a very positive effect on our institutional brand. So
100%.
Yeah. Okay. You want to take the next one?
Sure. Has Coinbase considered releasing a list of potential upcoming staking opportunities within the near future for retail investors? And this is from, sorry to miss the name, Use Case, Use Waste.
Well, I guess, first of all, I just want to say we've started to really embrace staking. And you were one of the people who really advocated for this. You should talk about what assets you can stake now on Coinbase Custody, because that was there was a bunch of confusion, I think, in the industry for a little while about can you do staking when your funds are in cold storage? Yep. And we came up with some really creative solutions there. But I mean, just to answer the question specifically before I turn it over to you, are we going to release an upcoming list of opportunities? No, probably not. The reason is that every single one of these assets, we're in close communication with our regulators about what features we're going to launch next. And so we don't, I wish it was that simple. We could just say, hey, these are the ones we want to do next, but it would actually potentially move the market. And we have to follow like a very thoughtful approach about how we do those disclosures and speak with our regulators. But yeah, you want to talk anything else? Or anything else about staking?
So maybe just a quick context setting. Coinbase Custody services only institutional clients. So we're able to generally think about at risks and new products that we launch just a little bit differently. It's not quite the same lens that we would think about for a retail business. And so with that lens on, we launched Tezos staking for Coinbase Custody clients. I think it was in May or June now. So it's actually been probably 4 or 5 months that we've been live with the product. And the way that we got comfortable sort of stepping into the space, and the way that we got regulators and also insurance underwriters, et cetera, comfortable with it, was we didn't want to ever put our clients' assets at any more risk than they are today. And so today, everything in Coinbase Custody is segregated. It's all offline. It's all as secure as we can make it. We didn't want that risk profile to change. So it took us some time thinking through and targeting the right project, the right blockchain, I should say, and how to sort of approach it to make sure we could stake with that same risk profile. We eventually found that figured out that we could do that with Tezos. And so we have some pretty creative ways that we're able to sort of, while we're generating keys still in an offline environment, construct the right transactions that we need to delegate to bakers that are running live. And then one of the unique things we do is we actually post the bond for all of our clients. So that way the funds that are at risk, if our baker were to make a mistake, for example, it's never our clients' funds that are at risk, it's just Coinbase Custody's. And so that keeps their risk profile the exact same, everything offline and cold storage, yet they still get to fully participate in the network from that perspective and receive those rewards.
Yep, that's great. I realized we should have probably defined what staking even is. There's always funny words like staking and baking and forks, and it sounds like, we're about to have a barbecue. But staking is kind of, for the simple explanation, is it's a way to sort of earn like interest payments by helping participate in the network. And it's spelled STAKE, like you might stake a vampire in the heart, not steak you might eat. So anyway, we should have mentioned that. We can define baking and everything else later. That's a whole other thing.
Perfect.
All right. So another live question from YouTube from MGR4769. Is Coinbase hiring, particularly in the areas of accounting and finance?
The blanket answer is yes. Coinbase is aggressively hiring across many, many different areas, including accounting and finance. So you should definitely check out coinbase.com/careers. You'll find a really nice list there of all the different positions we have open. And I think they're actually separated by functional areas. So you should be able to click into finance and then see the accounting roles that are open. Some of the roles you might find will be open for Coinbase Custody. We're aggressively hiring product managers, product marketing managers, engineers, both here and in some other cities. So if you're interested in any of the fun things we're talking about today, please reach out.
Always be closing. I love it. Yeah, we've hired about 120 people in the last 3 months. So we're growing. Please apply. All right. For you, Brian, from Green Sock Monkey, what are your thoughts on the DeFi space over the next year or two with leaders like Chainlink, Compound, Synthetics, and Maker leading it? How do you see Coinbase helping DeFi? Well, yeah, it's been really exciting to see DeFi start to take off. And for anybody who doesn't know, I guess DeFi is sort of a mashup of decentralized finance, but it refers, at least in my mind, to this certain section or type of dApp, decentralized app. There's so many new terms in this industry, which is about borrowing and lending. And if you look at the graphs of it, it's like it's starting to really have an exponential curve. And my high level thoughts on it are that, Ethereum came out and it had it had a smart contract language, and it could do, I think, in the order of like 25 transactions per second in terms of scalability. And some people were like, all right, we're going to go build games. We're going to go build, Reddit 2.0 with every upvote is an on-chain transaction. It turns out 25 transactions a second is a nice improvement, but it's not quite there to get like a really high throughput on-chain, like a game or something like that where 1 million people are going to use it. But one of the apps that it did work for was DeFi, because when you're going to initiate a borrow or you're going to lend, you might only do that, a couple times a month or something like that. So, Ethereum worked for DeFi, and we've now seen that one take off. So what it tells me is that next year in 2020, there's a whole bunch of other chains that are working on sort of the next generation of how to get even another order of magnitude or two of throughput and scalability. And that means that, those kind of new dApps that we hopefully games and prediction markets and things like that could actually take off with those next generation chains. So that's what I'm hoping happens in 2020.
Quickly, I'll add what I think is most exciting for me about DeFi is it's awesome to see sort of the early indicators start to hit that hockey stick moment where they're going up and to the right. I think what's really exciting is the pace of experimentation also feels to be going up and to the right. There's so many more folks involved. There's now like higher level abstractions for them to build off of. So it's not just build on Ethereum, it's actually go build on Compound or go build on something else. And watching those platforms emerge, watching that pace of experimentation accelerate, I don't always know, I have no idea what the next sort of killer use case for crypto will be, but it's really exciting to watch that pace of experimentation skyrocket. Sooner or later, someone's going to stumble across the next killer app, and that'll be really fun.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see that. I mean, I feel like there's this whole, when .com startups became like a thing, and we had the .com bubble, and then most companies that launch today, tech companies, have some kind of internet or tech component to it. I think we're seeing the next type of startup come out, which is a crypto first startup instead of a .com startup. And Coinbase Ventures has invested in 60 of these startups now. And so I think we're going to see a whole new wave of that. And if we get 1,000 companies that get started this way, some of them are going to be big hits, and they're going to be crypto native. They're going to raise money with crypto. They're going to, to use the app, you need to go get crypto. They might even pay their employees in crypto. And, that's going to be how we get to a real crypto economy and graduate from just crypto being this speculative asset that people trade all the time to how do we get a real economy going? So I think that'll be exciting. All right, last question from Digital SEC Arch on Twitter. What is the next level in quote trust? To become the most trusted is a low bar in digital currency, but to be empirically trusted like a major bank requires, I guess they're asking, how would we do that? You want to start?
Yeah, I do. I would push back a little bit on that trust is a low bar in digital currency. Having seen firsthand how much effort goes into securing digital assets completely, how much investment it takes to have the track record that Coinbase has now put forward, which is coming up on 8 years, securing tens of billions in these assets with never having a security incident. It's incredible. I mean, it is a level of investment that is actually unparalleled in any other asset class, because you can't really lose a share of stock. No one can steal that from you. But you can absolutely lose or steal a Bitcoin. And so these strat models are very different. So I think to actually execute the way Coinbase has executed is an exceptionally high bar, almost an impossible bar to set. So I'll push back a little bit on that. And then how do you build trust? Trust, I mentioned this briefly earlier. To me, it's track record. Coinbase, I just mentioned, hasn't even existed for 8 years. Many banks have existed for well over 100 years. I mean, Wells Fargo's logo is people coming west, in the late 1800s. It's going to take some time for trust to really build, and for those types of financial institutions to look at Coinbase and say, look, your compliance procedures and operations, they're top notch. The way you interact with regulators are top notch. All of that is fantastic. I want to see you do it for 10 more years. And that's what's going to build trust. So it's that track record that we try to improve upon every day. I have no doubt we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time.
Totally agree. Yeah, track record counts for a lot. And, Coinbase has been around about 8 years now. I think we're starting to really build that track record. Yep. But you're right, this is going to be, many decades, 100 years. And I think, the other things that I think about that really build trust, I mean, there's a few things. One is design. If something is well designed, people trust it. If it's easy to use, if it does what they expect, no surprises, right? I think there's also just sort of a integrity thing that people can feel in companies and products, which is like, do you do what you say you're going to do? So I think we try to do that. I mean, we're not perfect. I like to think though that we are the most trusted company in crypto, and trust is like this reservoir. Every little action that you take, you can put a little bit into the reservoir and bank it up. And then, if you make a mistake, you might have to make a little withdrawal of that reservoir. So I'd like to think we're putting those in there so that if we ever do make a mistake at some point, we can come back and fix it, and people will kind of give us the benefit of the doubt. All right. So that was fun. We're out of time, but thank you all for listening, and do please reach out on Twitter if you have any other ideas, and click that subscribe button. We're trying to get more YouTube content out. I can't believe I just said that. I was always watching these videos on YouTube where people are like, smash that like button. Anyway, please subscribe. We're trying our best here to make this entertaining. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John.